this one is asking some questions about, hey, who's going to be the face of the Avengers moving forward? Check it out.
Hey, John and Cruz. My name is Joey from Florida. Great to be on the show. Love you guys. A quick question. The Infinity Saga, they had Tony Stark as their main lead hero and Thanos as their main lead villain. For the Multiverse Saga, we seem to have Kang, obviously, as our villain for Dynasty and Secret Wars. Do you think that Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or someone else that you might think will be the main hero against our upcoming Kang in Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars? Thanks, and bring on the filthy.
All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. So, yeah, we were talking yesterday on the show about, that the MCU right now doesn't have, there's not a face of the MCU anymore, right? For 3 phases, there were 2 faces of the MCU. Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark and Chris Evans's Steve Rogers, AKA Captain America. They were the heart and soul of the MCU and the faces of the MCU. And, even when you got into Infinity War and Endgame, in Infinity War, it was Tony Stark that had the big moment against Thanos, when the magic nanobots created a foam to heal up his stab wound. But it was him squaring off against Thanos. And then when you got into Endgame, it was Cap's turn. There's that great image of that wide shot silhouette. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. That wide shot silhouette of Captain America standing there alone, getting his broken shield back on his arm, facing down Thanos and his hordes and legions of henchmen ready to come out. And he was going to face, so in Infinity War, Robert Downey Jr. In Endgame, Steve Rogers. But we haven't had, we talked about this yesterday, there hasn't really been a face of the MCU since. So they ask a really neat question. As we're now going into Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, Avengers 5 and 6, who are most likely to be those new faces? Because we haven't had any kind of hint or inclination of it yet. But as we build towards now, we're heading into that second leg stretch, heading towards Avengers 5 and 6. Who are those new faces going to be? If there is going to be anybody that is the de facto leader or leaders of the MCU and the faces of the MCU, who could it possibly be? All right. I want to jump into the classroom here for a second. We're going to talk about a couple of possibilities here. All right. Possibility number 1, Doctor Strange. So Doctor Strange is an interesting candidate to kind of be the face of the MCU. Number 1, he's one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. So there's that. Number 2, he's one of the most charismatic stars playing him in Benedict Cumberbatch. He's an infinitely likable character. Now, the things working against Doctor Strange are, number 1, Benedict Cumberbatch has said repeatedly that Doctor Strange isn't even an Avenger, which is fine. You don't have to be the in-movie leader of the Avengers and necessarily to be the face of the MCU. But, again, so I think there's some good arguments that it could be him, but some arguments against him are, again, he's not even really that closely associated with the Avengers themselves. And, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, while wildly successful, making over $900 million, is a little bit divisive among some fans. So there's that. So Doctor Strange is one of those names. Another one is Thor. Thor is an OG. He's been around since the beginning, since the first Avenger, prior to the first Avengers movie. So, and it's played by one of the biggest stars in the world in Chris Hemsworth. The Thor films have been very successful, all that kind of stuff. And again, he is one of the, maybe a top 3 most powerful character in the MCU, the God of Thunder. So these are all reasons why maybe Thor could be it. The arguments against Thor being it, though, are even prior to Love and Thunder, even in Ragnarok, which I consider Ragnarok to be awesome. I love Thor Ragnarok. That movie to me is incredible. But even in that, Thor, we started to see Thor lean a little bit more into the silly, which I thought Thor Ragnarok was a nice balance of the heavy and serious with the more lighthearted and silly. It was a good balance. But then we get into Infinity War, and then we started getting Fat Thor, and then we got Thor Love and Thunder, and a lot of the audience, a bunch of people did like Thor Love and Thunder. I like it. I didn't love it. I have problems with it. And a lot of people straight up didn't like it. So, you know what? There's some good arguments made that Thor could be it, but some solid arguments that he might not be. All right, next up. We've got Captain Marvel. Now, the biggest argument to be made that Captain Marvel will ultimately maybe become either the face of the MCU or one of the faces of the MCU is that Kevin Feige talked up the Captain Marvel character a lot prior to the first movie coming out. They're talking about how Captain Marvel is like the most powerful character in the MCU. I mean, that's what Kevin Feige said. I think it's kind of shook out that maybe Scarlet Witch is the most powerful character in the MCU. But that being said, he had a lot of big things lauding Captain Marvel. The first movie comes out, makes over $1 billion at the box office. One of the true big heroes of Endgame. You know, the battle was turning. That final battle in Endgame, it was turning. And then out of nowhere, here comes Captain Marvel taking out the fleet, the ship and everything single-handedly and all that kind of stuff. I mean, so there's some strong arguments to be made for that. Arguments against Captain Marvel, though, maybe becoming the new face, is that while the first film did make $1 billion, and while I'm sure the second film is going to be quite successful, she's not one of the more popular characters, right? I like the first Captain Marvel movie. I like this Carol Danvers character a lot, but she's not really one of the most popular characters out there. And just pure fan popularity, I think, has to be one of the things you take into consideration about whether they can become the face of the franchise or not. So some arguments for, some arguments against. All right, we got to talk about this guy, Spider-Man. Now, we had the debate the other day about whether Spider-Man could be the leader of the Avengers. That's idiotic, in my opinion. Straight up idiotic. He's a child. He is a child with notes who just 2 movies ago was like, I have access to people's Facebook page. I'm going to make this guy look dumb to the girl I like. Blah, blah. Like, that literally was 2 movies ago. You think that child can be the leader of the Avengers? Fuck no. That's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Not to mention, you think that child, you got Rhodey, who's decades of military experience, a leader of men. Think Rhodey's gonna follow? Like, in what universe does Spider-Man, this child, become the leader of this guy with decades of military experience and leadership and all that kind of stuff, a leader of men? In what world does that become a reality? In what world does, say, even Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, again, military vet, like been in leadership, all that kind of trained military and tactics and all that kind of stuff. In what world does he go, yeah, I'll follow this kid who just graduated high school? That doesn't happen. But there is a difference between being the leader of the Avengers and being the face of the MCU. And we just talked about with Captain Marvel that you gotta be popular. Like with the fan, if you're gonna make a character one of the faces, the forefront faces of the MCU, the popularity of that character has to come into play. And listen, Guy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there could be an argument that with Steve not there, with Tony not there, I mean, and you know, Natasha's gone, I think there's an argument to be made that Tom Holland's Spider-Man right now may very well, amongst fans, be the most popular character in the MCU.
He's the most popular character in the comics. So
I mean, he's definitely in the comics.
Yeah.
And I think and not to mention his solo movie just made how much? 1.9 billion, 1.7 billion? I can't remember how much. A lot of big number of money at the movie. So I honestly think out of the 4 we've had so far, Spider-Man probably becomes the leading candidate of being like kind of the face, not the leader of the Avengers, but the face of the MCU heading forward. All right, well, what about this? Talking about guys who just had $1 billion film, what about somebody who's not even been in the MCU yet? What about Reed Richards? Let's bring up my screen there for a second. Like, we're going from Spider-Man, who's been around in the MCU, kid, all that kind of stuff. Thor is an OG. Doctor Strange been around for a bit. Captain Marvel is coming up with the Marvel. Reed Richards hasn't even appeared in the MCU yet. But he's going to be the smartest man in the universe, in the MCU, once he makes his appearance. Like right now, they say Shuri is the smartest person in the MCU, and she is right now. But once this guy shows up, this guy is the smartest guy in the MCU once he shows up. And and this is a big if it's John Krasinski playing him, which again, it's probably not. But You take a character like Reed Richards, and then you take a guy with infinite charm and likability that the fans love, and John Krasinski playing him. Even though this character has not appeared in one frame, well, that's not true. He was in Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, but that was another Earth's version of him.
Mm-hmm.
But even though whatever iteration of this Reed Richards is going to be, has not even appeared for a single frame in an MCU movie yet, I think there's a strong argument that a Reed Richards, particularly if it's played by John Krasinski, could end up being one of those faces in the MCU. All right, how about this? How about Wong? Kevin Feige calls it the Wong Cinematic Universe now. Wong is kind of taking the place, actually, of Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury as kind of the connective tissue behind the various characters. He's in all the multi-team things. He's popping up in Shang-Chi. He's popping up in She-Hulk. I mean, everywhere you turn, there's Wong. It's the Wong Cinematic. He is the Sorcerer Supreme. I love this character deeply. He was probably, if not then one of the top 2 or 3 most enjoyable things about She-Hulk, which was a show I didn't like all that much. But I love this character and I love this guy. So although Kevin Feige was saying things like the Wong Cinematic Universe, part of the reality is the perception of Wong is that he's a sidekick. I mean, am I wrong about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's great. A lot of us love him. But the reality is, I think when most people think of Wong, they think of him as a sidekick to Doctor Strange, which does not devalue him as a character, but I think that almost immediately disqualifies him as being the face of the MCU. But long live Wong. I want to see him in the MCU for a long time. I just don't think he's going to be the face of it. All right, then there's this one. Let me pull out a wild card here. Hank Pym.
I mean, he's been resistant to it for a while, right? I mean,
yeah.
But we see what he's capable of.
Well, I mean, one of the things, I've been saying this for a while. One of the things I love about Hank Pym is that in What If, in the animated series What If, they pretty much portrayed Hank Pym the way I think he should be portrayed. He is the most dangerous man in the world. Hank Pym in What If takes out all the Avengers. He takes out Hulk. He takes out everybody. And I love that. And then even in Ant-Man, throw up the spoiler warning. Here we go. Spoiler warning. I was looking for Spoiler Pig. You have Spoiler Pig.
I've been hanging out with him today.
You've got Spoiler Pig. So a little bit of a spoiler here for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So mute your computers. You can unmute them when the spoiler warning goes down. But you know, when the battle started going bad in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, who's the one who comes marching through the walls? Listen, comes marching through the walls looking like a G. Just walking in casually. Yeah, I'm me and my aunts, we're going to fuck everything up. Bye, Kang. Want y'all to remember, Kang got beat by ants. But still, being that as it is, he is one of the smartest men in the MCU universe. He is lethally dangerous. But again, do I really think he could be the face of the MCU moving forward? Nah, he's a secondary character in a secondary characters movie. I love Paul Rudd's Ant-Man, don't get me wrong, but Paul Rudd is a secondary character in the MCU. And unfortunately, Hank Pym is a secondary character in a secondary characters movie, so that pretty much wipes that out. All right, I want to throw one more in here, though. And I believe in this one, although you might say I'm biased. We can take the spoiler warnings down. Shang-Chi. John, you're just saying that because you love that movie so much. It's true. I love that movie, man. I think it's the best movie that has been in Phase 4, since Phase 4. Anything in Phase 4 afterwards, I think that's been the best movie, has been Shang-Chi. I love it. It's fantastic. But there's a couple of reasons why I think Shang-Chi could be a very legitimate option to be that face. Number one, Simu Liu is becoming increasingly popular. He's got a couple of big movies coming out, including Barbie and a few other things. Make no mistake, when he has the 10 rings and masters the 10 rings, he is going to be a lethally powerful character in the MCU. He's going to be a very powerful character in the MCU once he has those rings. He was born and raised in a League of Assassins, basically. He was raised to be a leader of men. All that kind of stuff. And remember this. Destin, who directed Shang-Chi, is the director of Avengers Kang Dynasty. Now, am I necessarily saying that Destin's going to automatically play favorites with his child, with Shang-Chi? Yeah, maybe. Very well could. I mean, and because of that, because of Destin's selection, it makes me think that it could be possible that Shang-Chi could play a very vital role, a very prominent role in Avengers Kang Dynasty. Now, the things working against it, Shang-Chi's been in one movie. Like, so if you were yelling at your computer screen right now saying, hey, Campea, slow your roll a little bit. He's been in one film. You're not wrong. I think that is definitively the biggest argument against Shang-Chi taking that a big, big prominent role. Is that, listen, this guy's been in one film. And by the way, while we understand it was in kind of the pandemic era that it came out, it wasn't a hugely successful movie. It was a great movie, but it wasn't hugely successful. So let's not forget that. So again, let's take a look at my list again. So we got Doctor Strange, Thor, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Reed Richards, Wong, Hank Pym, Shang-Chi. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2023, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for your phone bill? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. You guys know I made the switch over to Mint Mobile a while ago. The process couldn't have been easier, and I can't believe that I am spending less than a third of what I was spending on one of the other major carriers before. By going online only and eliminating the traditional costs of retail, Mint Mobile passes the significant savings on to you. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily in minutes with eSIM. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. So, Jonathan, let me ask you this. If you had to pick, say, two of the names that I've got here that could potentially and legitimately be like the new faces of the MCU, which ones do you think would be the most likely?
Only because the last time we saw Doctor Strange, he was going off to solve an, what is it called? An incursion?
Yeah, an incursion.
And I think he's going to have the most experience dealing with the multiverse.
That's true.
And mending it. So that's
a good point.
I do think Doctor Strange is top of my list there. Let me just look at this again. Doctor Strange, you know, if they can develop Reed Richards enough, then sure. But we just said Shang-Chi has been in one, Reed has been in none, really. I mean, we don't even know if that's the version of
no, exactly.
that we're going to get.
Well, it's not going to be the version because that was
right.
what Earth 76Q15-Z. I can't remember. 818, I can't remember.
It was, yeah.
And that one's dead. That guy's dead.
So I'm going Doctor Strange, and then on a tactical and power level, I'd go Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Honestly, if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking those two are the most.
I think Spider-Man's going to be our spiritual kind of.
That's like not the leader of the Avengers, but kind of the face of the MCU.
So what are we talking about? The leader of the Avengers, right? Or who should be the face?
Like the face, like when you looked, like Steve and Tony were the leaders of the Avengers, but they were like the faces of the MCU to the audience and the fans.
It's not going to be the same this one. I think the leader of the Avengers should be just the guy who makes sense, or the person who makes sense.
Who do you think that is?
If they can't just shoe in somebody because they'll make the most money, just make it make sense. I would prefer that. The face of the...
If you say One Punch Man, I'm leaving.
No. The face of the MCU, obviously, it's got to be like Tom Holland. It has to be him.
Yeah, you're thinking Spider-Man?
But if it's going to be Sam Wilson, let it be Sam Wilson. We'll see how it rides out. I think it makes sense because he has that military background. He could... anyone who could strategize against whatever they're up against should be the leader. And bring up the group morale or... bring things together if the group is like separating. I think that's the character. And I don't know if I find that in anybody yet other than Sam Wilson.
What about Rhodey?
Rhodey's great.
Yeah.
I would prefer him because War Machine's just so dope.
I think what you
War Machine is just like the craziest
Yeah.
suits. I love the War Machine suits over any Iron Man suit. So yeah, I would love him. But they haven't put him up in the front that much. Where
Well, we got Iron Wars coming out, right?
yeah. So it'd be like kind of like a blowback to be like, oh wow, he's speaking up a lot more. You know, but I could see him taking that role. Yeah, I would love to see Rhodey at the front line. But he might be the first one to die too.
Yeah,
against Kang, because he's just a suit.
Well, he might not make it out of Iron Wars, so we just don't know
Well,
yet.
I mean, I think you've got a mixture of the government connection and tactical, but then you've got the big picture people, which I think even audiences look up to Doctor Strange as can you fix this? Can you explain this to us?
Well, even Spider-Man, when he had a problem he couldn't fix, first guy he went to was Doctor Strange.
And if you feel audience reactions at the time, like when you're in the theater, people have a connection with Doctor Strange where they feel like, hey man, these two people are gone. We're looking to you, like we look to Luke at the end of A Force Awakens. And then of course we got the lightsaber chuck, but I think they look to him.
All right, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? Like right now in the MCU, it's a little bit identity-less. We don't really have anybody who's a face of the MCU right now, no discernible DNA or leadership, but we've got a ways to go until we get to Avengers 5 and 6. Who do you think Marvel is going to kind of set up as the face or faces of the MCU by the time we get there? Do you think it's any of the people that I've listed here? Maybe you think I'm leaving some people out. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.